Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Emilia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keeden Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources. Finally. Been asking you for a while.
You have. And honestly, what's funny is I had never read this before. I had never
just get into comics.
This was dark.
Really?
This was a really dark comic. I felt like it was the stuff that happened.
I tend to like things dark, so it's funny that I didn't realize that it was dark though.
So
that's telling about me.
So we're talking about Batman Venom. It came out in 1991. It was by Dennis O'Neil. It was published in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight Volume 1. So it was issues 16 through 20. Trevor Von Eden did the artwork for it. And the artwork, I think, is part of it that makes it creepy because there are all these times where Batman has this really creepy looking smile. But also, I think what made it so dark is even though this is set in Gotham, we don't see Batman take losses too many times. It's not often.
And you start out with a big old L for Batman.
Yeah, you saw it out with it. I'm like, and honestly, it threw me off because I'm sitting there reading it. I'm like, oh, Batman's gonna save the day. How's he gonna do it this time? Good old Bruce. How's he gonna do it?
And pause here.
Okay.
Before Keeden says anymore, I mean, obviously we're talking about Batman Venom. It's been out for a few decades, but it's not one of the big storylines. So go read it now.
Yes.
If you don't want us to ruin anything for you. But yeah, he has a big loss in what? The first few pages?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he fails to save a little girl.
Yeah. And she looks what, like 5 or something?
From drowning. And so that was rough. That was heavy. And he takes it hard too. And it just
I think there's even a line in there where Alfred's like, surely you didn't expect that you could save everyone.
Yeah.
And Bruce is kind of like,
why do you think I do this, bro?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, yeah, I think I could save everybody.
Yeah. It's like, why do you think I do this, bro? Like, what?
So, yeah, we rarely see Batman take a loss. And when we do, it's usually not this personal. It's not like, I mean, you see you see this like personal loss of like he's trying to save this one specific person and they die.
Yeah.
Where in a lot of other scenarios, I guess there's like a recent one where say like Alfred dies, but even then Alfred kind of tricks everyone into thinking he's safe and like sacrifices himself. So
yeah,
there are very few times where you see death like that when he takes a loss. It's more like he gets tricked and he loses his money, or he, it's not something that hits you at your, I mean, I think most of us, when we see something like that, it's a little heart-wrenching.
Yeah. And also, I'm not going to lie, I do love the storylines where there's an evil mad scientist who's just locked in on his research so much that he has no problem sacrificing people. Like,
I would think that those people were rare, but there's a heck ton of people out there who made up research for their own nefarious reasons. It's why we think autism's linked to vaccines, because a guy made it up so that he could release his own vaccine and get money for it. And there was a social psychologist. Actually, when I was doing research in grad school, I was studying something and I wasn't getting like good results. I was like, man. And my graduate school advisor knew this other guy who was really well known for all this social psychology research. Well, a few years later, that guy was busted for making up his data. So like, unfortunately, these, people get carried away. Humans are humans. even scientists, and it can get a little sketchy sometimes.
Yeah, that reminds me. I was just watching a documentary with Colleen about the what's the famous Stanford prison experiment
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
how doctored some of that data was, and how like it was really interesting. How
Oh, I don't know if I know about Dr. Data, but I do know that it's fun when like your graduate students like, oh, maybe we should like stop this because people are hurting each other.
yeah, yeah.
maybe maybe we stop.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you so there's stories there's several stories when it comes to mad scientists, and I say mad not in the technical sense but in the movie and theatrical sense.
Yeah, it's like a term.
Yeah,
Some people might still be offended by mad or madness,
right,
but yeah, there's like the term mad scientists out
right.
there.
But there's two kinds. There's the ones that are their research, they're actually trying to do something good
Mhm.
and they get carried away, like
Yeah.
Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, right?
Yeah,
Which
great
those were
example.
the tentacles that took over, which whatever.
But
But then,
still, you swing too big kind of thing and
but
things
then,
go
yeah.
awry.
But then there are those like this one, Randolph Porter, who's just a bastard, just to be, just to be a
Yeah.
bastard.
Which is like awful, right? So it's his daughter that dies and he could give.
Yeah, does not care. That's what
Yeah.
I had to reread it because I'm like, there's no way that was his daughter. Like, no, right?
So here's the thing that yeah, okay. I'm hearing you now about how dark this is. Man, okay, I think being a psychologist has really skewed my view of things.
Nothing's dark to me. It's
So, no,
all
no,
dark.
no, things are dark, but like so unfortunately there are so many stories where the people who are supposed to care about someone don't. And so I in some ways I think I was so grateful how much Bruce Wayne cared to balance out the fact that this person in her life that should have cared, that is like in the role where they're supposed to have that connection, they're not having it. Um, I I really appreciated that balancing out because it is so sad how he's so set on his essentially like becoming a drug cartel, essentially. So developing Venom and working to make like super soldiers and this that and the other, and yeah, he does not care about his daughter to the point where yeah, you do have to do a double take of like, wait, no, this is the dad, right? And it's so sad. But Bruce Wayne is he just is completely off his game.
Yeah,
um and the thing is I think that we are too, because it's such an unexpected loss for I think even the readers. That what I think is really interesting is you see Bruce Wayne go down this path that you don't expect from him, but at
yes,
least for me, it was very believable because of just what happened and the fact that it throws you off the sense of what Batman is and
right.
how he always wins and he always figures out a way and he's like superhuman in his humanness, and but no, someone dies and he just is wrecked by it.
Yeah, and I do love that because this is a story about addiction.
Yep.
It's a story about addiction. And the thing is, like I said, we have the evil scientist. We also have the evil general with an evil name, like General
Yeah.
Slaycroft. Like what? Who who gave you that name, Slaycroft?
Right.
Right? And so Batman is, yeah, he's reeling from this loss, and he goes to the father who is this scientist, and the scientist is like, well, there's a way we can prevent that from happening.
We
I
can
have
make you
these,
superhuman.
we can make you
Woohoo!
superhuman. And then guess what? No more kids will die. Or and Batman's instantly like locked in on it. He's working out and he's slowly becoming more aggressive. It kind of reminded me
Mhm.
of Roid Rage, honestly. Uh
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't connected that, but I
yeah,
definitely see where you're coming from with that. It's like he's so it and the trajectory, the way they do it is so great too. So What's really cool with the storyline too is it emphasizes his detective side really well in the beginning. And it even highlights this shift that happens for him as he's taking the drugs, where he shifts from the detective to just like this reaction. And so in the beginning, he is honing his body as best he can, and he also was doing the detective work. He did everything right.
Right. He went by the
That's
book.
what
Yeah.
tears him apart. He did everything right, and he did it as efficiently as he could do.
And it
And I mean,
wasn't good
he is
enough.
a prime specimen of a human being, right?
Right. It's
And it
Bruce Wayne.
wasn't enough.
Right.
It wasn't enough. And then here someone goes, "Hey, this pill can take, not only will you not have to focus on working out, you can focus on all the detective stuff, get things done even faster,
Yeah.
but you'll physically be able to do things that you could not do even when you were working out and when you were doing all these things." And
Yeah.
he actually says no at first, and then he comes back. So he sits on it. He comes back and he ends up taking it, and you see him go down this trajectory of using it as something to help him push himself ahead of where he was, to like gradually deteriorating, where his mental capacity to think things through just goes away. It's a very, I think it's a very great way of creating a personal story of addiction, because it's Batman, it's Bruce Wayne. Because we can still sometimes get stuck into like, oh, this is weakness, or that person chose that, or and like, yes, technically, like at first, if someone's trying a drug of some kind, then yes, usually they're making a choice there, but they're not making the choices that lead them down this path where their brain really gets taken over. And I love that storyline in this. I'm not sure, I don't know. Whenever I think of Bruce Wayne really struggling, this is one of the main examples I think of. I think it's one of the biggest struggles that he has in the comics. At least that pops out to me.
It is, and I think it's because it's not often that you see basically the physical self-harm. Like
Mm,
normally with Bruce, it's a mental thing, but we're seeing it's still a mental thing, but it's also like a physical addiction component that's there
yes.
that we're not used to seeing, which is, and it's, I think what makes it so good is it does, like you said, it makes you really understand how people don't want to be addicts.
Right.
People don't want to be addicts. People don't want to be in that situation, but there's literally a physical manifestation that's
Yep.
like, I need this, I have to have this, I'm willing to do anything to get it. And it's really sad, and it does make you think about, because it's so easy to just not have any sympathy.
Yeah. Well, especially because unfortunately, when addiction happens, the people surrounding that person a lot of times suffer as well,
Hmm.
because things surrounding what's happening for that person when it comes to the addiction to whatever substance it is, it tends to break down relationships, break
Hmm.
down their ability to function. Um, there might be dishonesty. There might be breaking rules or laws or
Right.
boundaries with people. And it can be very hard to separate, okay, what behaviors are this person versus what behaviors are changes in the brain. And then
Hmm.
it's also tricky because, okay, well, the treatment, a lot of times with the treatment, a lot of it's based on helping that person be able to motivate themselves to change. And so that also is a mental twist that can make it hard to not put all the responsibility on the person,
Yeah.
because when addiction occurs, there are changes in the brain that are happening. There are all these different processes where, and actually with this one, there's they they don't tell you what the drug is, which I kind of like. They more hint at the types of drugs that you can relate it to. So um, he actually goes through a withdrawal process that based on what he describes, based on what the scientists behind it describe, the drug is very addictive and has a lot of physiologically addictive pieces to it in terms of your body literally craving it. The scientist even says he's surprised that Batman survived going through withdrawal because he had been on the drug for so long. I think it was like at least 6 months. I'm forgetting now.
Yeah, it was a while. It was a
It
little,
was,
yeah,
yeah,
it
it
was
was
a
like
while.
every day for at least 6 months. And, um, and he, it was so brutal. He literally told, he told Alfred, I'm going into the cave. I'm locking myself in for, I think it was 4 weeks
It was
or a month.
yeah, a
No, it was a
month.
month.
Yeah, a
It was a
month.
month. And, I have food and everything. Don't come in.
I bricked the other exits, like, yeah, don't come in no matter what. And Alfred's like, are you kidding me right now? Which this Alfred, he had quit when he saw him going
I
off that deep
thought
end.
about
He
you with that.
quit,
I was like,
but he came right back. He came right back.
it
He
is
came right
true.
because the reason he quit, it was the principle of the matter.
Yeah.
It was the principle of it. That's why he quit. It wasn't what happened in that one movie.
Yeah. It was I did think of you with that. Yeah, he like quit, but then kept working. And then I think at a later time he left when things got really bad, but he was very much like keeping an eye out. Cause right, when Bruce Wayne goes and locks himself in the cave, he's like, poor Alfred is literally sitting at an intercom hearing him just like these torturous sounds and
yeah.
everything coming from it. I mean, it was brutal. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, there are a lot of addictions where um there are medically prescribed ways of trying to help the person because of what's happening with the brain and the body.
Like methadone
Like
clinics.
methadone,
Yeah.
exactly. Or there are times where going through withdrawal, you need to go through a detox where you're carefully tracked. Alcohol's very dangerous to
Hmm.
go through withdrawal if your body is used to high levels. You can get some very severe seizures. Um, it sounds like Bruce could have maybe used a bit of a detox. Maybe he could have used some of those people he knew that were
Hmm.
like, knowledgeable about chemistry to maybe help him figure out how to get off of it. But
There were
Bruce
better
did
ways.
Bruce. Bruce did Bruce.
Right. He did what he does. And the thing is, this is the Venom that we see later on with
Yeah.
Bane, because this story actually takes place on the island of Santa
Hmm.
Prisca. And then it came out in 1991. The first appearance of Bane was actually in 1993
How cool is that,
on
right?
this same island. And so it was they did a good job with it. They did.
Right?
Um
It's like I love when things connect like that. And
yeah.
it's one of those subtle things that, I mean, you didn't know this storyline. So I'm assuming a lot of people don't. I don't honestly, I don't even remember how I found this storyline. I think I was just bopping around in the DC, what's it called?
Yeah.
Infinite
Yeah.
whatever one day and found it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love those ties to Venom.
And
And it, I think it actually humanizes Bane a bit
it
because
absolutely
you
does.
see this person that you really respect and what happened to them, and it's like, you know what? I wonder who Bane was.
Yeah. And the thing is too, it also you see a different side of Batman.
Hmm.
Normally, Batman is sympathetic to his victims.
Yeah.
Normally, he is sympathetic to his victims, but it's not often that he's empathetic, where it's
Mm,
like, I actually know exactly how you feel. And this was a
yeah.
time where when he's fighting against these other super soldiers, specifically
Oh yeah. Later on.
Slaycroft's son later on, it's like, I know how you feel. I know what you're going through,
Yeah.
because he had been in that position, and even at some point gets offered the pills again to get out of
Hmm.
an inescapable situation, and he's like, it's worse than death. He actually says that. It's like,
Yeah.
getting back on it and taking that is worse than death. And so it's really interesting seeing it, because I love seeing this Batman that is able to understand from a personal place,
Yeah.
right? Like a lot of the times we see Batman and he's, if it's not like an Arkham, one of his rogues gallery, it's like, okay, this Bruce Wayne did not grow up the way this person did. This
Yeah.
person grew up in severe poverty, and now Batman is breaking their leg for robbing a bank.
Yeah, Selena Kyle has to kind of, yeah, help
Yeah.
help help with that gap there sometimes. Because yeah, he does. He comes from a very different world.
Yeah, he comes from a very like
Here's the
his
thing, though:
yeah.
addiction, it doesn't care what world you're from.
It does not.
It
It
really
does
doesn't. And
not.
we have all of these ideas about who is someone who's at risk of becoming addicted or becoming dependent on a substance. We have all these ideas, but like the drugs don't care.
Right.
It's a combination of just a variety of different things. Yeah, there are certain people who are at higher risk. A lot of and a decent amount of those are environmental things. There's also genetic
Yeah.
things as well. There's definitely a genetic
Hmm.
component, hereditary stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
those drugs don't care that he's Bruce Wayne and he's got loads of money and that he's a really capable guy. That's a really good point where he can relate. So later on, um, after he has worked the drugs out of his system, he comes across these like newly made super soldiers on an even stronger concoction, and he meets this poor innocent kid who, once again, a terrible father. Like, dude, the parents suck in this
Bad
one.
bad dads
So
in this one.
yeah, so the
Down the
colonel or
board.
the general or whatever,
Slaycroft.
Slaycroft. Slaycroft
I
is
just
like,
love saying it.
yeah, he's like, take my worthless son, which okay, granted, it they're suggesting that his son might, maybe has like a lower IQ, or I don't know, there's something a little developmentally different about him.
I didn't even pick up on that, except the only thing I picked up on with him was that he was a gentle soul. He
He's
was
a
just
very gentle
he was
soul.
just kind. And at one point, and they don't say it, the general's like, yeah, we needed to tough him up because before I thought he was and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you were about to say a homosexual slur there, and because it heavily implied that this is the kind of
He's
guy he was
yeah.
dealing with because he killed
Once
the
again,
mom for raising the son so weak. Like
oh gosh, I forgot that he
he's
murders the mom.
evil,
Yeah,
evil.
yeah, there are no fathers of the year in this comic. Yeah. um, yeah, so he's like, yeah, scientist, give this stuff to my son so that I actually respect him because I can like make him into my like super soldier slave kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they're essentially your brain is dulled to a point where you're following the orders of the person feeding you the drugs.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, Batman really does try and connect and relate and get through to the the people who are on these pills. It's Yeah, it is a really good point that this, I think, helps humanize him in terms of his ability to connect to other people. And
Hmm.
honestly, that's probably a giant flaw with Bruce Wayne, with Batman, because he does not come from that world.
Right.
I think it's helpful that he surrounds himself with people who are more connected to that world. I mean, a ton of the people he surrounds himself with are more connected to that, but um, he does come from a place of a lot of privilege, and so this is something that can help him relate to people a little bit better. Um, and I think here's another thing for me too is that I I mean, don't get me wrong. When he's like showing up to Justice League and people with like tons of superpowers are like, "How did he just run off? And I didn't notice where he went. How did you do?" I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love that stuff. I
Yeah.
love when he's like just really good.
Right.
But what I love as much or potentially even more is when you see the humanness in Batman and in Bruce Wayne
Hmm.
being hit, and he's hurting in some very human way, and then he's finding a way to overcome it in his very human way.
Right.
And once again, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to substance use stuff, we think people are weak. We think that, you can
Do
just think
better.
your way out of it. Just
Pick
do
yourself
better.
up. Yeah.
Pick yourself up. Don't be sad. Just don't, take the drug or whatever it is, right?
Reminds me of
Um
X-Men too. Have you ever tried not being a mutant? Like,
I forgot about that.
that kind
Uh
of thing, right? Like it's
exactly.
ridiculous.
And so I think that when it's portrayed in characters like this, who I don't think anyone's gonna look at Batman and say, "Look at that weak guy.
Right.
Look at that person who just, like, can't handle it." No, you still see the strong, capable Batman, and
Hmm.
you see the struggle, and you desperately want him to make a few different choices early on, and then you see him be able to find his way out of it. And we think of strength as like not having to deal with that stuff, and you
Right.
just kind of like life's fine. No, the strength is when you actually have to build yourself up when you're
Yes.
struggling with things. So I
Yes.
love storylines like this that really emphasize that and use characters that we just innately love and see as powerful and strong going through things that historically we tend to mislabel as weak or um something that's not a big.
Right. And another thing too that um when it comes to addiction that they don't really touch on much in this comic is depending on what the addiction is, it might be something that you want for the rest of your life. And you
Yeah.
have to just
Yeah.
constantly continue saying no to it, which is one of Bane's issues. Bane is like, even when he gets clean, he goes right back to it.
And I would actually encourage, I do this too, words like clean,
Okay.
clean and dirty.
Okay.
It's encouraged not to use words like that because they
Okay.
suggest it's
Condescending.
condescending, or it suggests once again like, oh, you're bad if you're on the drug, you're good if you're off the drug. And those are really common terms of use, like, oh, you have a clean drug test, or
Clean
it's a
bill of
dirty
health.
drug test, or
Right.
yeah, when it comes to like that clean, and I actually almost said it earlier. It's just one of those things that as language evolves over time, they encourage using other terms. But
Yeah.
like you were saying though, absolutely. So with Bane, he is constantly having these cravings and having to work through trying to deal with when he doesn't have venom in his system. It's a constant battle. And so sometimes people have that experience, sometimes they don't. Some people need to focus on not using a drug at all, and other people it's more about in moderation.
Hmm.
Venom, it's probably more like a meth kind of situation where like probably most of the time it's not really a good idea to just dabble. Um,
Right. You don't go
but
near it.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe those people are out there and we just don't know about them.
Yeah.
But Venom seems like a
It
pretty.
is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It's one of those things because it's, I mean, with recreational drug use, there definitely, I feel like, levels to it, right? Like
Yeah,
marijuana is not looked at the way it used to be,
true.
right? But
And at the same time, there are people. I actually know someone personally who is realizing, you know what? I've been using marijuana to cope with things, and it's actually not helping me, and I need to dial it back and look at this a bit more.
yeah,
So even with the quote unquote like safe drugs, things affect our system. Some are more subtle than others.
right.
um some of them are more likely to cause your body to become like tolerate it, and so then you need like more in your system.
Hmm.
And to be honest, like you were just talking about how we think of marijuana is different, and sometimes the laws don't really match the drugs, which is also kind of weird.
Right.
So alcohol, super deadly, lots of issues with it. Tobacco, super deadly, lots of issues with it.
Hmm.
Marijuana, less issues.
Yeah.
I mean, still, if you're smoking it, like, I mean, be mindful you're still smoking it. Like, it's probably not great for your lungs. They're still researching tons of stuff. It still
Hmm.
affects you in some ways. But if we're talking about like what kills you, what is your body most likely to get addicted to in ways that you see a lot of major issues in life, it
Hmm.
doesn't rank as high as some legal stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I guess going back to this comic, it's one of those things where this isn't one of those things where it's just out there on the street and everybody's
Mm,
doing it. Like, nope, this guy invented it
yep.
and he it's just one of those things where he's constantly just giving it to Batman and trying to collect data. And the thing that's interesting too is Batman gets addicted to it without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about addiction. It's that you can be in a situation where it's like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're like, I actually need that. I
Yep.
want it. I have to have it.
Yes.
And that's when it got out of hand. And Batman didn't recognize it until he almost crossed the point of no return. They asked him to kill Commissioner Gordon.
Yep.
And he's like, okay, this is bad that I'm even considering
This
this.
is bad.
This is really bad.
Now I see it. I see it now.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not good.
So, yeah, when it comes to these types of things, a lot of times there's some sort of choice that goes into it at first. Maybe it's for fun, maybe it's peer pressure, maybe it's to help with something, and it could even be prescribed for the record.
hmm
Um, maybe there are a variety of different reasons where a person might take something or use something. And so what you were just talking about exactly, and we see it with Batman quite a bit, and it's nice because you get to notice it from a few different angles. So you notice the scientist is talking to what's the guy's name again? Slay something?
Slaycroft.
Slaycroft. So when the scientist is talking to Slaycroft, he'll talk about observations about how Batman is becoming more addicted, and his brain is becoming more sluggish. He's becoming more dependent on it. He's not able to think as clearly. He's not
hmm
Batman anymore.
Yeah.
You also get to see Batman doing his thing. And so you get these comments, and then you get to observe it as Batman goes about doing
Yeah.
stuff. And you see Batman with Alfred, who's giving, support to Bruce Wayne and trying to point these things out as like someone who cares and supporting him. So it's a very cool way of being able to see how the trajectory shifts, where it went from, okay, I'm doing this thing to up my game, to now I'm doing it because I'm doing it. And it's less of it's not really a choice anymore. It's something that he needs, and he struggles. In fact, the way that he's almost convinced to take out Commissioner Gordon is, it's like, oh, I'm only going to give you one pill, and if you want more pills, well, you got to do this thing for me. And so when you can see how reliant he is on the drug, and it's not even to get to his baseline. I mean, technically he's super strong.
hmm
He's not effectively Batman though. And so he's not he's not even able to get to his baseline in a lot of ways in taking the drug over time. And so it's just like breaking him down further and further. So
Yeah.
yeah, that shift where all of a sudden your brain and your body and your psyche is becoming dependent
Right.
on whatever that substance is to just get you at baseline or try to get back to baseline. And
hmm
sometimes there's a really big physiological or body addiction and component to it. Sometimes it's more emotional.
hmm
Either way, though, I mean, you've got to be careful. So, like you were talking about Venom with Bane. Imagine being Batman and everything he went through and how hard that was. And then you're fighting someone who's literally hooked up to the juice
Yeah.
that you were addicted to. That could be rough. Like there could be a ton of cravings that come up whenever he's fighting Bane. Like, the times where the venom starts spraying everywhere.
Oh
Is he
yeah. I
ever
didn't think
addicted
about. Yeah.
to take some of it? I mean, it probably helps it's not the pill, because
Yeah.
that's probably where a lot of the behavioral memory is for things. But one of the things that can make it really hard is if you're around the same like places and people and paraphernalia and those types of things. That's when the urge to start back up again is going to be at its strongest.
Yeah, I mean, in some storylines, Bane needs the Venom to stay alive. Like at a certain
Yeah.
point, it's like, okay, if he doesn't have it, he would actually die. But it's also really interesting the way that the story raps because Batman ends up cleaning things up pretty much the right way. Uh, but it was one of those things I did think it was a little bit interesting how it was like it kind of felt like what happened in Batman Begins with uh Liam Neeson's character. I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you. Like
Yeah.
when it came to Randolph Porter, the scientist, it felt like that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll give you that. My favorite parts of the storyline are honestly the first like 3.
Yeah,
I think it's the first half.
yeah.
So Batman's story of things. I think once he goes to the island and he's hunting him down and things weaken, in
Punching the
my
shark in the face
opinion.
was pretty cool. I like that part. That was
Just
funny.
the sharks were cool, you know. But yeah, I mean, I like how all that stuff connected to later storylines. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was like my favorite. Uh, eh, and also, like, if Batman's ever gonna just let your fate be decided and not save you, yeah, I mean, he was really, I
At the
mean,
same
what,
time,
this
this is
guy
a
took him out more than most anybody else ever has.
and killed his daughter. He
And
definitely did not care that he killed his daughter. I mean, like, yeah, did not.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
then there was the whole daughter thing. So there was a lot wrapped up in this. I'm not saying that Batman should just let people die. I'm also saying that this would probably be one of the hardest scenarios to save somebody if I were
yeah,
in his shoes.
yeah. Because the guy basically that guy gets addicted to
Yeah.
his own drug, which it was one of those things I read and I was like, huh, it's one way to wrap it. Because like I said, it was a very dark comic, but I did
Yeah.
enjoy it. The only thing, and I think we mentioned this before, trying to go cold turkey, locking yourself in a room, it's something they show a lot in movies and TV shows with addictions. I remember they did the same thing with I think it was Sam on Supernatural when he was addicted to demon blood. They like locked him in a
Oh,
room
right,
and
yeah.
they were like, "Oh yeah, we just gotta lock him in there to get clean."
At,
It's like,
at least for that one, someone else was locking him up. I mean, okay,
yeah,
that sounded bad out of context. So,
it did.
oh dear,
It doesn't count. You
I'm
caught
getting
it.
reported to an ethics board somewhere now. Um,
Doesn't count.
what I meant was, I totally agree with you. And so the white knuckling it and all of these kind of senses of well, what makes a person strong or what's the right way to do things. I do think that there can often be far too much focus on going cold turkey. Some people, that's the way they do it and it works for them.
But
There
yeah,
are safety considerations for a variety of different substances that do need to be taken into account. So I have people that I work with who um, sometimes they're wanting to reduce their alcohol, and we have serious conversations about like, hey, okay, we might like, do we need to worry about seizures and like there's safety risks here.
right.
So there's the safety issue. There's also so with Sam, other people were like, okay, we gotta work this out of his system. Now, it probably would have been better if they took a stepwise approach down, but it at least wasn't one of those storylines where um, Bruce is saying, I am going to man my way through this,
Right.
essentially.
And
Not to say that women don't go cold turkey, but
right.
it was a
But
very like manly way of doing it in some ways, like the old school manly way. And like, that's not what we need in life. Like, get a
it's not.
therapist,
Right.
talk it out,
Yeah.
use your support system. I think you've mentioned, is it Roy Harper and
Hmm.
Killer Croc?
Yeah. In one of
They're
the
in NA or
storylines,
AA together or something.
he was his like one of the people supporting him,
Yeah,
supporting Roy in AA. It was or yeah,
yeah.
in one of the yeah. It
Use
was
your
pretty cool.
supports.
Um,
I mean, Batman, he's got like probably like at least one or two people that he could trust to like do some sort of chemical breakdown so they could help him like chemically ease off of it so he doesn't almost die. Like,
every
it's not
storyline's a little bit
necessary,
different. I'm
dude.
like, do you know Clark Kent in this one? Do you like because
Oh, that's a
yeah,
good question.
it's funny because I won't lie. I tend to get sidetracked sometimes with like the funny little moments in comics that don't get picked up on.
There is
Wh-
nothing surprising to me in that statement.
When he is telling Alfred, like, hey, don't let me out of here for a month. And Alfred's like, what about the other exes? And he goes, I bricked them up. I sealed them. In my mind, that means that there is an undrawn scene in this comic where Batman just goes to Home Depot, addicted to Venom, buys a ton of bricks and cement, drives home, still roid raged on Venom,
Oh dear.
and bricks up all of the exits in the Batcave.
I have an additional concern. What about all the poor bats? Because
Oh yeah,
I feel like
forget the
Batman would
bats.
be very thorough about this. And he'd be like,
Yeah.
nope, I can't have a single crack. I'll find a way. And so all those poor bats are trapped in there with him. Like, did they die? How long can they survive without leaving the cave?
It's singular. It's the Bat Cave, not Bat's Cave. Like, yeah, no, one
That's
bat.
fair. He warned him from the beginning with that name. Yeah, that is a very interesting image of
like I said, it was the
how
first thing I thought of. Like, yeah.
Yeah, he's Batman. He probably at another point was like, at some point, I might need to
There
seal
were-
all of the. So he probably already had all
The
those
bricks were
materials.
already down there.
Yeah. Come on, it's Batman. But I mean, like, let's be real though. He goes through a lot of this alone. Arguably, Alfred's there, and in some ways, that is a good analogy. Where one of the very hard things about caring for someone who there's an addiction process happening is you might be desperately wanting to see them make different decisions or do things differently, and you're not able to control those things. And so you do get to see with Alfred where he's supporting Bruce, but he's not able to like do things for Bruce, and just like how hard that is for Alfred.
Mhm.
And on the flip side, like come on, Bruce, like you didn't have to almost die going through withdrawal. Like there were some options here.
Right.
Can we like be open to like sharing a few feelings with somebody, or like trusting someone enough to come up with something to help you detox? Like that was unnecessary.
Yeah.
Although
Like
I guess
there's
to be fair, he wasn't working with his full faculties.
and it was the thing that's interesting too is this is a brand new drug.
Yeah.
You don't know how to not be addicted to it. You don't like you have no idea
Yeah.
like what effects it's gonna have. And so I think that the one of the big things that stuck out here is like maybe go get professional
Yeah.
help.
Or
Right?
like Alfred really didn't call Leslie.
Yeah.
Like
This
at the very least, Alfred would have called Leslie, but like call up the physician you got on speed dial and be like, "We have a problem."
Yeah, and it's one of it's funny because in Batman comics it always lends itself to which timeline is this? Who does he know? Because I mean, we didn't see Dick Grayson anywhere running around.
Oh yeah, there was no Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
That was definitely clear. I guess that's true. Maybe he doesn't know Leslie in every storyline. I just always assume she's there.
Somewhere around, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she's like Alfred, you know? I mean, she's not a major character like Alfred, but I always just assume she's back there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I like I said, it's a very dark comic, but I also really enjoyed it because it was something that was very different.
Yeah.
It was a quick read. I mean, I read it in one afternoon. It was only like 5 issues of the comic. But yeah, definitely I would say check it out.
Yeah, I think even if you listened to us talking about it without having read it, I would still recommend it because like you were saying, there are some illustrations in there that I think really help depict things, and it's just it's really, especially those first few issues, it's just a really cool way of seeing a Batman struggle that you don't really see anywhere else.
One quick note, and we were laughing about this before, was we always joke around about how much sleep Batman
Yes.
gets staying up all night. I am currently running on so little sleep.
Yeah. It's very appropriate. It's very
is.
appropriate.
And I'm like, I'm the way that I feel right now, there's no way that Batman can regularly function like this. I got 2 hours of sleep last night, and the night before that I got 3 hours of sleep. And so I am on the
I don't
stroke.
know. I think we should have our listeners decide because maybe they feel like you functioned just fine.
That's, I'll give you that. I will give you that. I can tell you right now, I could not grapple from a building. Granted, to be fair, with full night's sleep, I probably could not do that as well.
Yeah,
But
so,
yeah,
I think your baseline has to be considered with some of this stuff.
shouldn't be behind the wheel of a Batmobile for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would never put you behind the wheel of a Batmobile because I think things would get very interesting wherever you were driving. You would
Yeah,
just have to hit every button. You'd have to try everything.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you know?
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Emilia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keeden Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JBS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.